All right. We've got some background noise. Is that you, Zachary?
Yeah, I'll keep my Zoom muted unless I'm responding to kind of cut some of that noise out. I'm sorry, I'm just sitting outside right now.
Sure. All right, Catherine, it's all yours.
Zachary, do you prefer Zachary or Zach?
Zach or Zachary's just fine. I do introduce myself as Zachary because that's my given name, but I don't mind Zach as a nickname if you would like that.
I use my given name too, so that's great. And thank you so much for participating in our virtual forum, which is allowing our democratic process to take place for running for office. And we're glad you can be here. And as you heard, the interview is going to be recorded and it will be available on our website in its entirety, or if it's edited or whatever, that will be sent to you for your review. And we have Linda Brown, who's going to be asking subsequent questions. And Julie McClintock is the timer. So I'll ask the first question and then give you the amount of time you have to answer it. And thank you again. The introduction is, please tell us how long you've lived in Chapel Hill and why you're running, what previous involvement in community issues or other experiences make you a good candidate. And you have 3 minutes.
Well, thank you. I've lived in Chapel Hill since I moved here to begin law school at the University of North Carolina. I did move here last August, so I've been here for about a year. I am a North Carolina native, and I was born in Fayetteville, North Carolina, where I was born and raised, where I graduated high school. And then I did receive my undergraduate education in psychology and neuroscience from the University of North Carolina at Wilmington. I am running because of the experience I gained in local government proceedings and policy analysis while working with the American Civil Liberties Union this summer as an intern. There, I worked with a policy strategist and attorney to monitor the Texas General Legislative Session and assess some of their legislation for potential discriminatory impact in order to provide a policy brief and kind of a working document for empowering local citizens to enact local government ordinances from their capacities as citizens. I was interested in the town charter of Chapel Hill after I did those charter analyses for the cities of Dallas and Houston in Texas. And I did take a look at our town charter and was motivated to run kind of in the same breath to one, expand the electorate, and two, to prioritize the use of evidence-based public policy from the administration of the municipality of the town of Chapel Hill.
Good, thank you. In recent years, pooled developer campaign donations have become more common. Do you intend to accept campaign donations from people outside Chapel Hill who do business with the town?
Thank you for asking. I'm actually not taking any campaign donations from people in or outside of Chapel Hill. I'm not after people's money. I would like their support and their vote. For me, I don't need donations to do that. While it has been a challenge managing my own campaign and being my own campaign treasurer as well, I think it speaks to my commitment to public service that I am running this myself and that I am motivated as well as equipped by the tools and access to the most cutting edge research that we sit on here from within the university.
Good, thank you. And I have an aside question. Since you're in law school, how long would you be available to serve if you're elected?
Yes, ma'am. So it's actually a very serendipitous time timeline for my legal research here at the University of North Carolina. I'm scheduled to graduate with a Juris Doctor and a Master of Science in Information Sciences in the spring of 2023. So given that the term limit of the campaign is 2 years, I would be on the way out at that time. And if I am elected to win this fall, I am already committed to not rerunning as a praxis for sharing the institutional power of this administration in order to center the voices of people who have not been centered from this capacity in the past. So I'll be here until 2023. I will use the research that I have access to in order to inform the policy that comes from the administration. And I will leave a working document for other service-oriented graduate and professional students to take the helm after me and to use their access to the latest research, whether the subject be on administrative law or city and regional planning, what have you, after me.
Good, thank you. Now, this is the plan for a mix of housing, and this will take 7 minutes. Please discuss affordable housing needs in our community for 3 minutes, and then there'll be subsequent questions.
Thank you. Well, recently I attended another campaign forum with Dr. Gu and Mayor Heminger. And it was sort of disheartening to me to hear Mayor Heminger speak about all of her best intentions for prioritizing affordable housing without mentioning at all to the constituents that she does profit off of a private real estate company herself. And while it's wonderful that she's able to participate in our economy in that way and to be an example of resilience as a woman who is about her own business and who can conduct her own affairs accordingly, I don't think that being invested in private real estate aligns with the notion of affordable housing. You can't do both, really. You can't benefit from the privatization of a human right and advocate for affordable housing. So for me, it's about using the research. It's about going to the experts, and it's about knowing where to look for the data. And specifically, I have been researching information from the National Low Income Housing Coalition. So in North Carolina, the minimum wage is $7.25 an hour. That means that at a minimum wage job and in the fair market housing economy, one would have to work 86 hours a week to afford a 1-bedroom apartment at a fair market price of $811. I don't know who has found an apartment in Chapel Hill for $811 a month, but I know I certainly haven't. And for me, like I said, it's about knowing where to access the research and being able to use that research to serve our community. I do believe that as a public research town, we have a unique commitment, not just to our students and community members here, but to the state of North Carolina to use our local government platform as a policy lab of sorts in itself. And if we have access to the most cutting edge research here, who better than to trial and error experiment with how progressive and inclusive public policies can be made with the evidence than us at this public research institution.
Thank you, but unfortunately we're time limited.
Okay,
Linda, did you have a follow-up question?
Linda, you're muted.
I have 2 follow-up questions that are 2 minutes each. The first one is, what are your suggestions for avoiding the displacement of low and moderate income residents and for ensuring that additional affordable housing will not be segregated by race or income?
Well, like I said, Linda, my go-to strategy for any of our policy issues is going to be to defer to the experts on the matter. We have an entire school of city and regional planning here that is filled with progressive policy that has already been written down. Indeed, there are better solutions already written down. And when one comes from a background of a a historically excluded population like I do, I don't get to take off my diversity and equity glasses or cap just because I'm tired or just because it's time for me to go home, because I also wear my oppression on my skin as a person of color who's minoritized in a space. In our town of Chapel Hill, we know the history of this place. I walk by a segregated graveyard every day on the way to my office in the student union or to my classes in the School of Law. As far as my commitment to keeping the historically excluded populations in town, that's going to come from my commitment to centering evidence-based policy from inclusively crafted studies in the administration.
You have not really specifically answered the questions, and I asked you for strategies for avoiding the displacement of low and moderate income residents, some specific strategies.
Excuse me, I apologize if you feel that my answer wasn't specific, but I feel that in order to give you a more specific answer, I would have to be from within the administration myself. The strategy is to do the research. It's to incorporate the research in the policy formation. So while I don't purport to be an expert on city and regional planning, I know where to go to find the research, and that is my strategy for providing and maintaining affordable housing at the 30% average median income and below level.
Okay, I think we may be not understanding each other on the term strategy, because what I'm asking you are, what are some specific things that can be done? Now, if you've read the information of the National Low Income Housing Organization, there are some specific things that they suggest. So
well, we're not reinventing the wheel with policy formation. That's the beauty of having access to the research that we do have access to. So what I would do is defer to the experts, and I would defer to the policy initiatives of other progressive communities that have already begun to tackle these issues of housing affordability. And I would attempt to administrate in this role in a way that incorporates what has worked from those policy labs themselves in our community. That is my strategy.
Can you give me an example of one of those strategies that you think has been successful?
I will not. I don't think I'm informed enough at the moment to do that, but I'm able to do the research and I'm able to access the research. And I think that's what sets my campaign apart from Mayor Hemminger's.
Okay, the second question is, how might conditional zoning be used effectively by the town council to further the goal of providing a mix of housing for all incomes?
I mean, it's the same kind of question. You have to do the research first. You have to go to the experts. So as a legal researcher myself, I would review the zoning policies of the town. I would look at the handbook that I've checked out from the School of Government myself, called County and Municipal Government in North Carolina, that advises administrators in their local government capacities on how to develop policies that are pertaining to whatever the issue be, in this case, affordable housing and economic development. But I'm not going to purport to be an expert on a subject that I haven't done the research on, and I won't give you a specific answer because policy is a collaborative effort. And if I'm in the position to administrate, I will be able to include a team of expert researchers who are more equipped to broker that information on behalf of the community than I am in this moment.
Thank you. We appreciate your answers. And now we'd like to go on to grow a strong economy, and you'll have 9 minutes in total. But the first question is, has the form-based code as implemented in Chapel Hill's Blue Hill District strengthened our economy? How or how not? And that's for 3 minutes.
I'm not an economic expert, and in order to make that determination myself and to broker that information on behalf of others who are curious about whether a specific policy has been beneficial or detrimental to the economic development of the town, I would have to consult the experts in order to compile the information, to evaluate the information, and to assess the effectiveness of any policy.
Thank you. And the next question is, how might conditional zoning and other policies be used to support locally owned businesses? And that's 2 minutes.
Conditional zoning, as in zoning specific to business operations, zoning specific to.
Zach, let me give you a quick explanation. The North Carolina General Assembly has changed the rules for development review, and no longer are special use permits routinely used for development projects. They are using conditional zoning, which is kind of a new way of doing things, which is very flexible. And it also means that developers can be asked to do more than the ordinance specs or less. So that's kind of a question under this new regime. What opportunities do you see for helping locally owned businesses?
I think that the greatest opportunity that we have to help locally owned businesses is to empower these student populations here. As we saw last year, when the town and the university had a gap in co-governance, the students that came here to participate in both the university proceedings and the town economy were sent home. So if you want students to be able to spend money and participate in the economy, students' needs have to be centered in the conversation. For me, as a graduate and professional student myself, I do see great potential in reimagining what role these administrative offices can play for both the local business owners of the town as well as the university officials. We could act as sort of a bridge to advocate on behalf of the needs of students as well as local community members, both historically privileged and marginalized, in order to, I'm sorry, that's my time.
Oh, good, you saw that. Thank you. And now the next question is, the UNC Chapel Hill Housing Report was presented to the Town Council September 10th. And hopefully you were able to see that from what was sent to you.
The link that was sent to me was actually broken. I was not able to review it, but if you could send me something else, I'd be happy to look at it now.
Okay.
We'll be glad to send it to you. It's not anything that could be digested quickly.
Mm-hmm.
All right, let's move on to the next one.
What do you know about how the cost of town services and tax revenue income of residential housing is on the town's budget? And that's 2 minutes.
Could you repeat the question, please?
Sure. What do we know about how the cost of town services and tax revenue income of residential housing is on the town's budget?
How does it bear on the town's budget? It's a
Right.
missing a verb. Okay.
How does it bear on the town's budget? I mean, well,
Well,
tax revenue.
Excuse me, Zach, what we're talking about is residential. We're mainly getting residential development. So the question is, how is that impacting residential development? Is it more money coming in or more money going out? That's the question.
The tax revenue from the residential development, how is that impacting the town's revenue is what you're asking?
Correct.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. I mean, I guess from an abstract point of view, the idea of taxes is to fund the mechanism of the government, whether it be at the local, state, or federal level. So any increase in tax revenue, I don't imagine would hurt the town's proceedings or the ability to serve its community members effectively. Now, where we're getting that tax revenue from is wholly conditional on what the type of tax is and who is paying those taxes, as well as who is able to pay those taxes, right? And as far as the revenue that's built off of residential development, I mean, that's well and good, but there are other ways to increase revenue. And as far as the idea of increased taxes, it's about one, sharing the wealth, but also sharing the prosperity that comes with allocating those resources equally and equitably. So from the privatized development of housing, I think Mayor Heminger, with her private real estate company that she owns, would be more suited to speak to the potential for the revenue from housing development to be used effectively or not than I.
Thank you very much. And then the next question is concerning building a green infrastructure, and that will be 9 minutes. And for 3 minutes, what are your priorities for green infrastructure for the town, such as parks, tree canopy, transit, stormwater control, greenways, and green spaces? And how would you act on them as a council member?
Yes, ma'am. So these issues are interrelated. Just as systems of oppression are interlocking and synergistic, so are the solutions for ameliorating those gaps in service that could be provided to everybody as opposed to a small group of people. So I can tell you that I am more devoted to environmental justice than I am filling my own pockets and my financial well-being. Indeed, I do care more about the environment than I do my own financial well-being. So for me, what I would do from my capacity as an advanced legal researcher, as well as a Master of Science in Information Sciences, a candidate, I will prioritize the most inclusive evidence-based policy that can tackle these problems from a variety of perspectives. Having access to resources in the environmental law department, in the city and regional planning department, and in the School of Information and Sciences school here at UNC enables me to go directly to the most cutting edge research that can be used to build evidence-based policy that's aimed at propelling Chapel Hill into the realm of sustainability that it has not been already made into. Where my skills come into play here and what will enable me to effectively administrate as the mayor comes from my ability to access the research and my own interest in environmental justice. We know that so for example, there's a initiative that Mayor Heminger has started to propose a greenway that connects like a bicycle greenway that connects the triangle. I believe it's like a 17-mile path that allows people to bike within the triangle. And that's all well and good. That's a cute idea. But if people are having to work 86 hours a week at minimum wage to not be able to afford housing here, how are they going to be able to participate in the access to greenways?
Thank you.
Thank you.
Unfortunately, the time's up.
Okay.
And we have more questions.
Follow-up question, which is, first one is for 2 minutes. What are your ideas for how town council might direct the use of open tracts of land such as Legion Road, East Town, the Green Tract, and J Street?
Could you repeat the question?
What are your ideas for how the town council might direct the use of open tracts of land such as Legion Road, East Town, Green Tract, and J Street?
My suggestion for the town council would be to not purport to have any sort of expert knowledge that they haven't culminated in their own credentials in order to answer that question. So if we're interested in land development that's committed to reducing any sort of carbon footprint or environmental pollution or exclusion, we're going to always defer to the research of the experts in order to craft inclusive evidence-based policy.
The next question for 2 minutes. How might the town's climate action plan be revised to address short-term achievable goals? Give an example.
Could you speak more about the town's climate action plan and why it needs to be revised first? I'd like a little more context.
I can give you a little context. So the climate action plan was recently passed. It has a lot of lofty goals, which are quite vague and to be met by 2050. So what this question is getting to is what can we do in the immediate future that's measurable? Thank you.
Thank you. I think what we can do in the immediate future that's measurable is to increase access to the research that's already written down. We sit on a hub of knowledge right here in our public research institution. And so for the town council to purport to have solutions from their capacities as public servants without having the ability or wherewithal to access these solutions in the evidence themselves, I think is detrimental to the development of the town, as well as obscuring in nature as far as the roles and responsibilities of brokering this information on behalf of their constituents. My answer for any specific policy initiative is going to be to defer to the experts. And I will not, as a candidate committed to making evidence-based public policy, give you an answer that I have not looked at the research for myself just yet, but I can assure you, I know where to look, I know who to talk to, and I know how we're going to organize ourselves in shared institutional governance between the university leaders and between the town municipality in order to craft inclusive, evidence-based public policy.
Go
Well,
ahead.
I'm not sure you can answer the next question. What pedestrian and bike improvements would you prioritize?
So that my goal personally is always going to be to decrease the carbon footprint, because like I said, I'm committed to environmental justice. That means decreasing the need to drive into the town and increasing access to the town, whether it be through progressive public transport initiatives, and whether it be for the development of safe bike lanes and the decrease of our investment in fossil fuels. Last year in student government here, I supported a plan called Another UNC is Possible that called on the university administrators to pull from the university's rainy day fund and endowment in order to divest resources from the fossil fuel industry in order to reinvest those industry or those resources into increasing access to green spaces and decreasing Chapel Hill's carbon footprint. I understand.
You were for shutting down the Fluid Bay boiler plant then? Is that what you're saying? That supplies energy to the university? Is that what you're saying?
Is that a fossil fuel industry?
Of course.
Then
Yes.
yes, absolutely.
You don't know that. Okay.
Absolutely. And the how do you say
That's a very worthwhile goal.
it is, but that's the thing. That's the thing. We are the state of North Carolina is not a home rule state. That means that our municipal government does not inherently maintain power as a subsect of the state government. We have to get power from the state government in order to do something.
Right.
So the plan is to collaborate with other progressive leaders in our local government capacity, at our state level capacity.
Thank you, but we have to move on. Support public engagement is the next group of questions. Had you had a chance to look at the questions beforehand?
Yes, I did. And I went over my my manual on county and local government in North Carolina. And
well,
I was able to
the question I
familiarize.
want to ask you is, the town council has had many outreach planning exercises and adopted town plans reflecting public engagement. How would you be guided by these plans as you make land use decisions?
Well, as a student here, I think that public engagement includes centering students' voices in these decisions. A lot of the times students come here and they're not even aware that they can register to vote as participants in local government. So my plan for increasing community engagement is to expand the electorate by partnering with our student organizations in order to increase the size of the electorate, in order to get a more diverse sample population so that we can assess the needs of the town, the desires of the constituents, and bridge gaps in interinstitutional service that could better administrate between the university and the town municipal government.
We have
Thank
a
you.
2-minute follow-up question. How will you handle citizen requests and comments? What efforts will you make to increase public engagement, especially with marginalized communities, to meet the needs of residents?
Like I said, I don't get to take off my diversity glasses because I'm a marginalized person myself. People are not inherently minorities. They're minoritized in a space that is inherently exclusive. So part of engaging with the community includes expanding the electorate to include the voices of the student populations that have not historically been centered in the conversation here. So I think the effort to increase the quality of service that both our university and both our town government can provide is intergenerational as well as interinstitutional. And so what I'm running for is to invite you all to reimagine the kinds of service that you could be provided by incorporating the researchers and the experts of this institution and the future leaders of our institutions who are the graduate and professional students of the community with a demonstrable commitment to public service.
Okay,
Thank you. And we have a final question for you for 5 minutes.
and Catherine, I think we're going to have enough time to open it up to let folks on the call ask Zachary questions. So,
Okay,
That's-
good.
okay, go ahead.
Please give an example of a town council decision that you agreed with and one you disagreed with. And explain why you agreed with the former and how you would have handled the latter.
Okay, are you all familiar with the decision to build the, what was it, like a warehouse at the MLK Drive?
112,
Of course.
1200
So,
MLK.
1200 MLK. So this discussion came up at my last candidate forum with the Young Democrats organization at UNC. And I was able to listen to the perspectives of both Mayor Heminger as well as Councilwoman Dr. Gu. According to Mayor Heminger, it was a tough decision because she was faced with allowing that warehouse to be built or displacing the members of that community. Again, back to my first observation, I don't think human rights are privatized commodities, and I won't argue about that. I don't think that a person who inherently profits off of their own private real estate company can genuinely speak to the need for providing for affordable housing, because I do think that those are diametrically opposing ideas, privatized real estate versus affordable housing. For me, I am glad that the town did what they needed to do to keep those populations from being displaced from their homes. But even more so, I wonder, how is it that the Trinity apartment complex has, sat there untouched for what, like 10 years now, with all the talk that Mayor Heminger has talked about being committed to affordable housing in the last 10 years while she profits off of her own private real estate company?
Thank you. And now
There-
we have.
There was a
people who've been
follow-up
listening in.
question. Yeah, there
I'm sorry.
was a follow-up question, but you answered that in your answer.
Good.
Okay.
Thank you. And we have some people who've been listening in, Virginia Gray and Michael Murphy, and see if anyone else has questions for you.
I could ask a question. So, hi, Zachary. My name is Virginia Gray, and I'm a former professor of political science at UNC. And while it's heartwarming that that you place so much faith in the research of experts at UNC. But just to look at it from a practical standpoint, if you go to a department, whether it be city and regional planning or any other department, and you ask these professors, I want you to tell me what's the solution to X problem. You know, the average professor is going to say, gee, you know, I'm busy doing my research, I'm busy doing my teaching, I already have service commitments, I don't have time to get involved in solving the problems of the town. That's what council members are for. That's what city employees are for. And even if they say, okay, I'm going to leap in with both feet and help you, let's say you're talking to 6 people in that department. 3 of them are going to advocate for solution X, and the other 3 are going to advocate for solution Y. And then you're still going to be left there saying, well, I don't know what to do. You experts can't agree. And, you know, that's because there's many different ways of solving problems. There's many different definitions of problems. So I just wonder how you're going to, in a practical way, how is this going to work? You know, this seemed to be your answer to everything was you're going to rely on the experts. And like I said, it's heartwarming, but how's it going to work in practice?
Well, it's any policy or any experiment, whether it be with policy implementation or another discipline, is contingent on trial and error. So based on my own researching abilities and based on the collaborative efforts of other expert researchers, I would prioritize those who can identify inclusive evidence-based public policy in order to propose solutions, in order to implement those solutions. But like I said, I'm not here to run 2, 3, 4, 5 times. I'll have my trial and error from the capacity of mayor if I'm elected, and what works can stay with the next administration, and what doesn't work is with the purview of the next administration. But ultimately, the idea is to have access to the research. So when I say that I'm inviting you all to reimagine how these roles can serve you as members of the community, the idea is to put researchers devoted to evidence-based public policy in these positions in order to keep access to the most cutting-edge research, in order to trial and error the policy implementations, and to keep the ones that work and benefit, and then to revisit and recant the policies that don't work. I think that
Zachary. Go ahead, Virginia.
I think that the idea of running 2, 3, 4 times is more inhibiting towards progress than not. Because if we're going to increase external validity based on our empirical tools of investigation, then we understand that we need to increase internal validity in order to do that. And that's why I would say that I would not rerun, because it would be about sharing the institutional power and brokering that access to institutional power that is inherent with occupying these spaces.
Let's see if we can get some more questions.
Linda?
I'm just wondering again how practical what you are saying is, because from what I know of the work of council members, almost each week they have 900 pages of documents to review, and they have to make a decision on them. They also use consultants, which make recommendations to them. But in the final analysis, it's up to them to make a decision. So you don't have a limitless amount of time in which to make a decision about something. And other council people have said that they spend as much as 60 hours a week really learning the job to begin with, and then they manage to get it down to 30 or 40 hours a week. So
do you think that they've read the manual on county and municipal government in North Carolina? And do you think that they have access to the resources themselves within the School of Government?
Yes.
They routinely ask for assistance and ideas from various schools in the university.
But do they have access themselves to the university library catalogs in order to do that research themselves?
They probably don't have.
There are too many things that they're responsible for to have the time to do research on.
And that's why we
single
share
given
these
issue.
positions. That's why we don't take them for 3, 4, and 5 terms. That's why you give somebody else a term, because it is tiring, but it's about your commitment to public service.
I'm talking about the ability to actually get something accomplished in a term or in a specific amount of time.
Well, I can
Because
read
when
a
it comes
graph,
to
and I'm sure that the other
Okay, Linda,
people.
let's not talk over each other. Let's get Zach can give an answer and then we'll take another question.
I can read a graph, okay? And if I have experts who are showing me a graph on a specific subject and we can agree that it would be worth pursuing as an experimental policy implementation, then we'll agree on that.
So any other questions for Zachary before we wind up? Michael?
No, but I think just, one of the things that we heard from previous Mayor Foy was 90% of the activity of the council is land use management. And so, and as Linda points out, there is a huge volume of information on each particular land use plan. It's not particularly research intensive work. It is more reading and understanding what the developer wants to accomplish and understanding what the communities, and I like some of your ideas about trying to include more people in the community. But it is, I do question whether the lack of the missing piece here is research and evidence more than planning. So that's just more of a comment, I guess.
Well, thank you for your concern, but as a candidate, I'm committed to holding myself out to that scrutiny and being available and accessible to the constituents who may have specific concerns about the use of land and about how the town administrates. I've already been subscribed to the town council's emails for months now. Well, since July, since I decided to run, and have familiarized myself with the volume of concerns that come in weekly. I familiarized myself with the proceedings of the town council and how they're honestly doing a wonderful job with responsiveness. I can see how concerns come in, specific concerns, and how the employees of the town council are able to consult the research and the experts in order to reply and address the concerns of the town. But like I said, this is about taking turns. The same problems require new perspectives and new solutions. And as the only Black person running, as the only descendant of slaves running for this
No, you're
position,
not. No, you're not.
for mayor.
Oh, for mayor, okay.
Yes, exactly. I understand that there are other Black people running for town council. I'm very excited to have their perspectives incorporated in this role. But as the only Black person running for mayor, my perspective is one that has been historically excluded from this office. And that's where I think I do have the greater potential to serve the role than not. And what I'm able to contribute will be what I'm able to contribute. And my shortcomings will be just that, as everybody's are. But like I said, I'm not here to occupy the space and exclude others for terms to come, because I'm only planning to run for this term. And if I win, I explicitly will not rerun. I will allow somebody else with a newer, fresher perspective to come in and wield the institutional power that is inherent in that space.
Well, we really appreciate you
Thank you.
being with us today, Zachary, and for joining us. I think you've got some interesting ideas. As a former council member, I was on the council for 12 years. I have never seen a Carolina student win a race who has not reached out and built a bridge to the ordinary citizens in the town. So it has happened. And Mark Chilton was an example. He was a student, he became a law student, and then eventually became mayor of Carborough. But it takes building bridges. So I would just make that comment that if you really want to win, you've got a little work to do.
Thank you. I'm excited to do it.
All right. Thank you so much for joining us.
Yes.
Thank you,
Appreciate it.
Zachary.